Good morning.
Good morning.
And welcome to a new week, which we start off with a lecture about conformity. I hear myself very loudly. I don't know if you do it too. Maybe I should adjust this a bit. After a while, I will start screaming anyway. Let's see, I now noticed it takes away a few centimeters of the right side from the PowerPoint here. I hope I don't have the most important information over there. So I put together a content like this. It will be mainly about conformity. I know the title is Conformity and Obedience, but we'll have a look at a movie on Wednesday about Milgram's experiment about obedience. So we'll say a few more words about that then. But there are pretty similar phenomena, conformity and obedience. You do something that you think people would like you to do. So we'll have a look a few things here. Ash's classical experiment that he said to his subjects was about perceptual judgment, but it was really about conformity. Why do we behave in a conforming way? What kind of reasons are there? In social psychology, the two main explanations given for this is informative and normative reasons. And we'll have a couple of more explanations. We will dig a bit deeper into the human brain in order to try to explain conforming behavior. Some affecting factors. Not everybody is equally inclined for conformity in every situation, so we have a look at a few affecting factors. And to some extent, I'm going to say that conformity is really cool. It's good for us to behave in a conforming way. We probably make less mistakes in our lives if we conform with others than we would do if we try to do everything by own hand. But of course, this inclination for conforming behavior can lead wrong in some kind of situation. It's a rule of thumb that works pretty well in many situations, but not always. And we have a look at the phenomena here called the bystander effect. Conformity gone wrong. And also another phenomena here, groupthink. Then we probably finish with a few words about obedience here. Causes and example of obedient behavior. A few words about vocabulary here. Conformity. You behave in a way you think people expect from you. Well, that's a good definition of conformity. Another phenomena quite close to conformity is imitation. You copy somebody's behavior. And of course, imitation might be a result of conformity. You have a look how other people behave, and then you copy their behavior because you think that that's the kind of behavior that is expected from you also. But conformity is a wider phenomena, because it's not always that you do something just because others are doing it. You think they verbally express their expectations from you and so on. There are norms in society that tells you to behave in a certain way. And then if you do that, it's an example of conformity. Another phenomena, emulation. You have a look at the model, you have a look at their behavior, and you have a look at what kind of goals they achieve by that behavior. And you might think, that's a nice goal, I want to achieve that also, but you might think out some other way to achieve the same goal. So you try to copy the results of a model's behavior, not automatically the exact way they behave. So those are related phenomena: conformity, imitation, and emulation. And I will probably jump back and forth between conformity and imitation here quite a lot. You can look this up on YouTube. There are experiments you compare human children with chimpanzees. Human children can imitate the exact behavior. Even if it seems like a quite stupid way to receive a goal, they still copy the exact behavior in order to receive the goal. For instance, they push a lever even if it's pretty obvious that you don't have to push that lever in order to get the result. But they still do it because they've seen somebody else do it. Okay, Ash experiment. He said it was about perceptual judgment. So in this original setup, he has 18 sets of lines. And in every set, he has a standard line and 3 comparison lines. And he has subjects have a look at these 18 sets. And in every set, they have a look at the standard line and the 3 comparison lines. And then their task is to tell which of these 3 lines is equally long as the standard line. Boring experiment. And he sees that the task is very easy because 99% of the answers the subjects deliver are correct. Sometimes they seem to fall a bit asleep and tell something wrong, but in 99% they say the right answer. Ash takes the exact same 18 sets of lines and he does the experiment with a twist. Now people, I think in this original setup he had only male subjects. So now people have a look at the exact same 18 sets of lines, but now they're going to do this in a group. So Ash, I'm not sure that is Ash, but let's say it is. Ash puts up a set of lines here with the standard line and 3 comparison lines, and person 1 starts telling his answer. And of course everybody can hear that. Person 2 says his answer, and so forth. And of course in the beginning, because it's so simple, it's very boring. But what person 6 here doesn't know, that he's the only real subject in this experiment. The other ones are accomplices of Ash. So after a while, if you see photos from this, you can see that the real subject is almost falling asleep because it's so easy and so boring. But after a while, the accomplices here starts telling the same but obviously wrong answer. So Ash puts up a set of lines, and it's pretty obvious that A is the right answer. Person B has a close look, says B. Person 2, B, 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 and now it's the real subject's turn, and as you can see, he's not sleeping anymore. He's pretty agitated and confused. So the question is, how does this affect the subject's behavior, the real subject's behavior? What will they say? What is their verbal behavior in this situation when they have heard 5 persons before them telling the same but obviously wrong answer? And what we can compare with this here is the 1% wrong answers when people do this task individually. So how big percentage wrong answers do we have here? To what degree do people conform with the others' obviously wrong behavior? Well, it goes up, the percentage of wrong answers goes up from 1% till 37%. So in 37% of these cases, the real subjects tell the same wrong answer as 5 people before them have done. So conformity, an example of conformity. And of course this, I guess you have heard about this study before. It's quite famous. So what do we think now? What do we think about conformity? What will happen if we conform? If the person conforms, what is he doing? Well, he makes a mistake. So conformity is bad, right? If you conform with others, you will do wrong. If you ignore others and follow your own judgment, you will do right. Conformity bad, individual judgments good, right? Because This is how it usually is in life. There are a lot of people walking around and they wish nothing more than to do wrong. And if we conform with them, we will also do wrong. So we should ignore other people because other people are all the time trying to do wrong. Right? No. Why are these people doing wrong? Why are they saying the wrong answer? Why?
Someone tell them to.
Yeah, Ash helps them to do wrong. That's why they do wrong. Would they do wrong otherwise? No, probably not. So of course Ash should have had one more condition in this experiment. He takes in people, for instance, could have 7 persons in each group, and tell them, you're going to have a look at lines. In every set, for every set, you're going to try to tell which of the 3 comparison lines is equally long as the standard line. Try to do right. No, he wouldn't even have to say that. That would have been very interesting. My guess is we would not have 37% wrong answers in that kind of condition. We would probably not even have 1% wrong answers. People would be right even bigger, even more often if they do this in a group and nobody is trying to do wrong. And if you think about real life, think about yourself. What are you usually trying to do? How often are you trying to do something wrong, and how often are you trying to do something right? Have a thought about that. So if people usually they're trying to do right, it's probably quite rational from us to have a look what other people do and let that behavior inform us and take that behavior into consideration. That's probably a very rational way to behave, instead of ignoring what everybody else is doing. And this leads us to the 2 main explanations that conforming behavior have been given in social psychology. It's usually talked about informative reasons and normative reasons. Informative reasons, you have a look at what other people do, how they behave. When do we do this? When do we have a look at how other people are behaving? Well, especially in situations where we don't know exactly how to behave. For instance, because we don't have much experience about these kind of situations. So we feel insecure how to behave. What do? Well, we have a look at how other people behave. Probably a very, very good strategy. If you don't know how to behave, have a look at other people, how they behave. Because even if this is a new situation for you, you don't have much experience about how to behave in this situation, there might, among other people, be those who have done this a lot of times and they know exactly how to behave. So if you have a look at how they behave and then copy their behavior, you will behave as you were an expert without really having a clue about how to behave. It's really rational strategy. We can behave like experts even with no experience, just by copying those who know more than we self do. And this, of course, is probably a strong factor, for instance, when we start a new work. When we are new at work. We don't know so much yet how to behave in this work. So what do? Well, we have a look at more experienced colleagues and so on, and probably we copy them. Imagine, for instance, that you are a fresh doctor and you're going to make your first bypass operation in your life. Okay? What would you recommend this person who is going to do his or her first bypass operation in his or her life? Would you tell them, try to do exactly as everybody else is doing? Or would you tell them, try to figure out an own personal way to conduct a bypass operation? Imagine you were the patient and the doctor asked them, would you like me to do like everybody else does, or do you give me some freedom to try out some personal way to conduct this bypass operation? I know what I would ask. I want you to do exactly according to the norm. I want you to be the most conforming person ever. Why? Why? Well, we could almost give it some kind of evolutionary explanation. Why are bypass operations conducted as they are today? It's a result of randomness. Do you think so? There are only randomness as reason to why bypass operations are conducted as they are. No. Bypass operations are conducted the way they are conducted probably because it has been shown that is the best way known. So if somebody is going to make a random change in that procedure, the probability of it to become an improvement is much less than the probability of it to make the procedure worse. It's like if you're going to have children and the doctor asks them, would you like your child to have a random mutation in his or her genes? You get to decide, yes or no. What do you think you would choose? Yes. I want a random change, mutation in the genes. No, probably not. Why not? Is there any chance for a random mutation to be an improvement? Yes. Is that bigger or less than 50%, do you think? I think it's much less than 50%. Why? Because the setup in our genome it's not a question about randomness. It's been evolutionarily selected through millions of years. Because it has been shown that it works well. So if we in the human genome now are going to make a random change, there is some probability of it to become an improvement, of course. But the probability of it to be the opposite of improvement, which I can't find the English word for now, is probably much bigger. Normative reasons. Sometimes we copy other people, we conform with others, not because we think they know more than us, and we feel us unsecure about how to behave, but because we want them to accept and like us. We want to be one in the gang, so to speak. So we look how they do, and the probability is quite high that we will copy their behavior. One example of this is dress code. There are a lot of, for instance, male academics in the world. Okay? And then sometimes they get together, not only male academics, but females also. But what do the male academics do when they get together in a congress? What do they all do? They wear something very strange around their neck. It's called a tie. Think about the tie. Is it a good thing? No, it's a stupid thing. You put something around your neck. Does it keep you warm? No. It's better with a sweater than a tie. Does it cover your body? Not much, not any vital parts. Does it feel comfortable? No, it's horrible to wear a tie. It's a horrible thing. Every year in the world there are some people, men, who dies because they get caught in a tie in an elevator door or something else. They would have survived if they were not wearing a tie. It's a stupid thing to wear, but still all these male academics walk around with a tie around their neck. I do that also. Why? Why do they put that stupid thing around their neck? Because everybody else is doing it. And you want to be a part of the gang. So punks have pikes in the hair. Academics have a tie around their neck. It's the same thing. You want to be a part of the gang. So you do something stupid that you think everybody else thinks is the right way to behave. And what do these academics do when they get home? Well, the first thing they do, they take the tie off. Oh, eventually, now I can breathe. Then, of course, if you get enough high in the ladder, You take your tie off and you wear a Helly Hansen something instead, because then that's cool. But you have to be high in the hierarchy in order to do something like that. We at the bottom of the hierarchy, we have to put on that stupid tie. Okay, so normative reasons. Sometimes you do things not because you think it's good in a way, objectively rational to behave in that way, but you think that that is what's expected from you from others, because they behave in the same way. Does it work then? Normative reasons. Do we get liked by, now more against the imitation phenomena here? Well, there are some indications that it might be a quite successful strategy. Chotran and Borg made this study. We have subjects. We put them together in pairs, so 2 and 2. And in every pair there is one real subject and one false subject, an accomplice of the researchers. And in every pair, these two persons, they're going to interact. It was something about they had photos and they sit there and they describe the photos for each other. I guess this photo was not in the study. It was the most disgusting I could find in my computer, so I took that. So they sit here and they describe photos for each other. And what the subject doesn't know, that sometimes the accomplice, while they're interacting, imitates him or her. Okay, so if the subject has some kind of tic, he sits and pokes himself in the air, for instance. I don't know if that was one of them. Let's say the subject sits and pokes in the air, and then the accomplice imitates this and sits and pokes himself in the air also. And the accomplices, they have trained on this. So they have trained on imitation. So they were expert imitators. So they can imitate people in a subtle, not too obvious way. Because this would probably not work if it was too obvious. So sometimes the accomplice sits there and imitates the subject in a subtle way. And sometimes they don't. When these persons, when they are ready with their interaction, we split them, we take the real subject aside, and we ask him or her a few questions. Have they noticed anything strange in the situation and so on? Nobody has. So in those cases, they're being imitated. They're not aware about this. And then the subjects are also asked, what did they think about the interaction? How did it go along? What do they think about this other person, who they think is another subject? And what can we see? So they give a rating. How much do they like the accomplice here? So what we see is that the subject give the accomplice a higher rating if the accomplice have been imitating them compared with if the accomplice has not been imitating them. So the accomplice is perceived as a nicer person by the subject if the subject has been imitated compared with a controlled situation. So imitation leads to liking, this indicates. Okay, so informative and normative reasons. But if we dig a bit deeper, we try to find some kind of neurological associations, correlates of imitation. Now it's more about the imitation. Conformity is a wider phenomenon. So let's talk a bit about imitation here. And of course then we have these famous mirror neurons. What are those? Well, more or less like this. They were found in the 90s, or at least they were named in the 90s. Well, I think that is the original study where it's always cited as the first study about this. Okay, so in this study they have monkeys, and the study is about activity in the motor cortex in monkeys when they perform different behaviors. So for instance, the monkey is given a piece of food on a tray, and of course the monkey grabs the piece of food. And then you can have a look at the monkey's brain. How is the brain activated while the monkey grabs a piece of food? And that's what you have here. You have activity, for instance, in the motor cortex, F5, the premotor cortex. There you have activity, increased activity, when the monkey grabs a piece of food. Then, at least according to the story, they took a break. The first time they noticed this. They take a break. The monkey is still sitting there with the equipment on and records brain activity. And then some sneaky other monkey runs up to the food and takes it. And then somebody notices, hey, look, the monkey's brain is activated in a similar way when he observes another monkey grabbing a piece of food than when he grabs the food himself or herself. So when the monkey looks at another monkey grabbing the piece of food, there is also activity, increased activity in premotor cortex, for instance. Some other parts also. So the neurons in premotor cortex, F5, mirrors observed behaviors. They're activated in a similar way when behavior is observed than when the behavior is performed by the individual, him or herself. There's a lot of discussion about these mirror neurons going on. Some mean, for instance, the famous Ramachandran have written a lot about this, and he thinks that this might explain a lot about human behavior. Imitation, empathy, learning of language, and so on. Okay? So if you don't have any empathy, you don't learn anything, no social learning, you have deficit language, and so on. What do we call those people? What do you get? What diagnosis do you get? Autism. So Ramachandran, for instance, sees an association, a possible association between deficit mirror neurons and autism. Others mean that that is not true. Or at least says that is far from being shown, that there is any strong connection between those. But those kinds of theories have been put forth. That mirror neurons might be associated with empathy, social learning, learning of language, and so on. If we buy that mirror neurons are, to some degree, mediates at least the connection between observation of behavior and performance of that behavior, then those mirror neurons might be involved in these results. The same study as before by Chartrand and Borg. Okay. Second study, a study with a twist. So now again, we have subjects paired up with accomplices, and they sit and interact. They describe photos for each other. And in this study, the accomplice either sits while they're interacting and shake his or her foot. Did you see that? Did you see that? Did you see? Foot is shaking there. So either the accomplice sits there shaking his foot or her foot, or they rub their face. So they have a tick. One of the two ticks they perform here. Well, not too obviously, I guess. But they do that. And then we film the real subject here. And we count to what degree do they shake their foot and rub their face. And what do we see here? Well, we see like this. The real subject, the participant, they rub their face to a higher degree when they sit with an accomplice who rubs their face, compared with if they sit opposite an accomplice who shake their foot. And they shake their foot to a higher degree if the accomplice is shaking his or her foot, compared with if the accomplice is rubbing their face. So the foot shaking and the face rubbing is to some degree copied by the real subjects. Again, the real subjects are interviewed afterwards. They're not aware about this. They're not aware that they're sitting there shaking their foot or rubbing their face. But it can be shown with data that that is what happens here. So it's possible that the mirror neurons are, if we buy that theory, that theory might be declared dead in a few years. We never know. But if we buy that theory about mirror neurons, of course, if the person is sitting there, for instance, opposite the person is shaking their foot, they probably don't focus too much on this because that's not part of the task. But their system, the cognitive system, notices this to some degree. And if mirror neurons are activated in a similar way as if the person were shaking their foot themselves, and that activity is not vetoed by some other activity, for instance in prefrontal areas, then that might lead to increased probability that they will sit themselves shaking their foot. Because, of course, we should be aware that activity in premotor cortex doesn't automatically lead to performance of the behavior. Because that activity might be vetoed by other activity, for instance, by prefrontal cortex. We often have an urge to behave in some way, but we control the impulse and don't perform the behavior. But maybe activity in premotor cortex at least leads to increased probability to behave in this way, which these data results would indicate. Then we could, of course, ask, what happens if we take the prefrontal cortex out? What happens then? Well, of course, a lot of things might happen. But there are a group of patients that has been described, for instance, in this paper. So we have patients with prefrontal damages who show compulsive imitation. They can't help but to imitate. So for instance here, this doctor takes on a pair of glasses. They have put a pair of glasses on the table here. The doctor puts on a pair of glasses. They don't tell the patient anything. But what does the patient do? Well, picks up the glasses and tries to put them on, although he's already wearing a pair of glasses. And if I remember right, sometimes the patients were even told, don't imitate me. But they couldn't help but to imitate. Compulsive imitation. And this would indicate that if we have, for instance, if they have functioning mirror neurons, they observe a behavior, the premotor cortex is activated as they would conduct the behavior themselves, and they can't control that impulse because they have damage in the prefrontal cortex. So this would indicate that maybe everybody have some kind of automatic response to imitate behavior that we observe, but that we usually can control that impulse because we have functioning prefrontal cortex. Another interesting thing that was found, at least about some of these patients, was something that was called utilization behavior. Imagine, for instance, you walk in a corridor in a hospital, and in the corridor you see a table, and on the table there is a picture, framed picture, a nail, and a hammer. Right? What would you think? Probably you would not put so much thought to this, but you probably say, what could be done with these things? Would you do it? Would you take the hammer, put the nail in the wall, and hang up the picture? No, you wouldn't. You're not at home. You're in a hospital. You realize that could be done with those things, but you control the impulse. You don't conduct the behavior. Some of these patients, they can't stop themselves. They walk in the corridor, they go up, take the nail, put the nail in the wall, and hang up the picture. Because that's what the objects present indicate that should be done in this situation. So maybe we have also some kind of impulse, automatic impulse for that kind of thing. Objects in our presence gives us impulse to behave in a certain way, but usually we can control those impulses. And if we try to dig even deeper, how did those mirror neurons get there? If they're there. How did they get there? What are they doing there? Who put them there? The right answer is God put them there. No, He didn't. Well, at least I don't think He did. He had something else to do that day. How did they get there? Why don't we have some kind of kick-ass individualistic neurons? So if we observe a behavior, our brain is activated in complete opposite direction. So if we observe a behavior, we do the complete opposite. Why don't we have a brain that functions that way? Why would we have an imitation brain? How did the mirror neurons get there? Why don't we carry around kick-ass, do it your own way neurons instead? Well, actually there was one person here with those neurons. It's the person on the right here. So now we have a video here from Pleistocene, and I should warn those of you who are sensitive. It will get a bit gross here after a while. Okay, so here we have two early humanoids here. Okay, the person on the right here has kick-ass individualistic neurons. Never does anything somebody else is doing. They always do things their own way. And this person have been born with a genome that synthesizes protein that way. Have not chosen this herself, but has those kind of neurons. The person here is born with a genome that synthesizes protein in a way that has given him or her mirror neurons. Have not chosen this themselves. So they stand here on the savannah with pines, but okay. Okay, they stand here having a chat, and then we have a look what happens. Okay? You're warned. Let's have a look. Oh. See the screaming and running from the right to the left. This person's mirror neurons are activated. Doesn't really know himself why, but what the fuck, I'll run along here. Sheep, this person is thinking. I'll never do that. So now you know what will happen without mirror neurons. Was it too subtle? No? That's my theory. I tried to publish this flash movie in Science, but didn't accept. I sent it to Ramachandran, then we publish it together. So the story here is that if a lot of people are doing something, and they might even be only one person, there quite often is some kind of rational reason for that behavior. Because we humans are born with a big brain that we use in order to behave in a rational way. So if somebody is doing something that stands out, runs away or something, they don't do that on random. People don't randomly start screaming and running from the left to the right. There's usually some kind of reason for that. And if we are inclined to take after, to copy their behavior, we will behave as we knew the reason for the behavior. And it sometimes might increase the likelihood that we will survive. And in the next generation, you know what will happen in the next generation. Nobody is born with these kick-ass individualistic neurons. They didn't get in the next generation. While the other person there, well, she met the love of her life while they were running there. And in the next generation, a new small carriers of mirror neurons start inhabiting the world. So that's the true story of what happened there and then. Okay. We'll talk about a few affecting factors. The factors that affect the probability of conformity. And I divided them in 3 main groups here. Factors, task factors, model factors, and the actor factors. So, let's start off with these task factors. Difficulty and importance of the task. How those affect the probability of conforming behavior. So we have a study here. Baron et al., 96. So I thought you will get a feel of how it was to be a subject in this study. So when I push the button here, a picture of a man will be shown on the screen here. Very quickly. And then another picture with 4 men. A lineup, a police lineup. So your task is to identify which of these 4 men were in the first picture. And this is very old, from 96, so it's drawn pictures. They didn't have photos in that time yet. So it's drawn pictures. Your task is to identify which of the 4 men was in the first picture. You ready? And this is the difficult condition in the experiment. Who was it? Number 1, right? One. Okay. Well, you have your... That was the difficult condition. And for some other subjects, they used easier condition. So this is the easy condition. You ready? Number 1, right? One. That's him. That's the one, I'm sure. I would recognize that mustache anywhere. No, it's number 3. He only takes his jacket off. His drawn jacket off. So that was the easy condition. So we have two levels of difficulty here. High, the first one. They're only shown for half a second each and only once. And the easy condition, then the pictures are shown for 5 seconds and twice each. So that's one manipulation. The other manipulation here is of importance. Low importance. Sometimes, for some subjects, the study is described as a part of a pilot study. We just have a try at this. So they take down the expectation. This is not really so important. And for other persons, for other subjects, it's told that the result indicates how reliable you are as an eyewitness. You feel? How would you like to perform on a test that indicates how reliable you are? Of course you want to get a good result. I want to show that I'm a reliable person. You know, one of the best manipulations to get people to do their best on a test is to say that it's an intelligence test. Because nobody thinks, I don't care about that. Maybe I'm stupid, maybe I'm not, I don't care. No, intelligence test, everybody tries to get a good result. So this is something similar. It indicates reliability. And also, those with the subjects are told that there is a possible monetary award. Those with the best result gets $20. So, manipulation of importance here. So then and the subjects, we have 3 persons telling their answers, and the subjects are together with 2 fake subjects, 2 accomplices, and the accomplices say the wrong answer in 7 of 13 trials. So we have a look to what extent do the real subjects conform with the accomplices' wrong answer. Well, it become accomplished plural genitive accomplices is are. So this is the result. Percentage conforming answers. So the highest percentage of conforming behavior we get when the task is difficult with high importance. Then we have the highest degree of conformity. And the lowest degree of conformity we have when the task, again, is important, but it's easy. So if I really want to be right and the task is difficult, then I tend to copy others' behavior to a higher degree. And if I really want to be right and it's obvious that the others are wrong, then I ignore them. Then I go against them. Then I don't conform with them. Then I tell what I really think is the right answer. If the task is of low importance, well, then the difficulty of the task has no effect. The level of conformity is somewhere between. So that maybe could be generalized to other situations also. What kind of clothes we carry colors and so on. Of course, with the outside of a certain frame, it can start to get dangerous, but within a frame, it doesn't care. It's not so important what colors they have and so on. So maybe when we pick colors for our clothes, we want to be not too conforming, but a bit conforming. Somewhere in between feels perfect. But if something is about life and death, and we don't know how to behave, then we conform with others. If it's so obvious that others are wrong, then we ignore them. Then we go our own way. So if we generalize those results. No, I don't take that medicine. I have a lethal disease, but I don't take that medicine that everybody else is taking. I try out something on my own. No, you don't do that. If you're not sure that the medicine is the wrong one. While if it's obvious that everybody else is taking a stupid medicine, then you ignore them. Then you don't take it. A few actor factors here. The person who might be conforming, imitating. Let's have a look at mood and brain activity here. I skipped that last time, but usually lecture on Karolinska, you have to have at least one brain scan picture in every lecture. I didn't conform with that norm last time. I'm sorry about that, but today I'll show a few brain scans here. Okay, mood. If I remember right, this study was conducted in Singapore. So we manipulate the subject's mood. So some of the subjects are told to describe something pleasant that they experienced lately. And the thought here is if you describe something pleasant, you become in a good mood. Others are told, describe something unpleasant you have experienced lately. We try to induce bad mood in them, negative mood. And then we also have a neutral condition here. Describe your way to school. For some it sounds a bit negative, I think, but okay, let's think that that's a neutral condition here. So positive, negative, and neutral mood. After this, the subjects answer to a few questions. 6 questions altogether. So for instance here, question number 3. What is the sum of all numbers from 14 to 29? And we think, what the heck? How can they answer questions like that? But remember, this is from Singapore. They know stuff like that in Singapore. Oh, Jesus. I looked up the right answer, but I can't remember it. I think it's 344 here. But anyway, so they get questions like this. And then they give the answer on an answering sheet. But the thing with the answering sheet here, that on it you can see what other people have answered before. So this person, they told there's the 6th person here, they're going to give their answer on an answering sheet, and on this sheet they see what 5 persons before them have answered. In this case, all of them have wrongly answered 4. So in 3 of these 6 questions, the others give a wrong answer. So the question again is, to what degree do the subjects conform with the others' wrong answer? Is it affected by mood? Okay, now I don't know if you have know this before, but it would be nice to have a guess here. What do you think? Which gives more conformity? Positive mood or negative mood? It's not so obvious, right? Positive mood. Why? Think that, those intelligent people, of course, they know I do. Well, it's a good theory, yes? It's possibly wrong. Right, what you say. Well, if we have looked, so first, second, and third wrong answer from the others, we see that the level of conformity decreases here generally. Maybe they're starting to think that those others might not have all their hens at home, as we say in Swedish. First here, maybe I'm thinking wrong here, but then they start to suspect that maybe the others don't know the right answers here. But in every condition here, we also see that those with positive mood show the highest degree of conformity. Those with negative mood show the lowest degree of conformity. With neutral mood, somewhere in between. So positive mood increases likelihood of conforming behavior. Negative mood decreases the probability. Okay? Let's have a look at another study in the same fashion. So now we travel from Singapore to Holland here. Okay, so in this study, subjects get to watch 1 or 2 film clips. One is Mr. Bean. You feel you start laughing already? At least you did 20 years ago. He was funny, but not so much anymore. Others get to see Sophie's Choice. I haven't seen that, but I heard what it's about. It's a horrible movie. So, positive mood, negative mood. No, I'm not saying it's a bad movie. It's about a really heavy subject. So, positive mood, negative mood. After this, the subjects watch another video clip. And they're told they're going to listen to music. And they hear music. And on this video, they also see another person listening to music. And this person has a pen in their hand. Because they're writing down some information. Writing down some answers. And while the subjects watch this, they have a pen in their hand they also. So they're sitting there watching this video. On the video, they see a person with a pen in hand. And they have a pen in their hand themselves. And sometimes, in this video, the person is playing with their pen, tapping it on the table and playing it. Pen playing, it's called here. So they're playing with a pen. So now we film the real subjects and we have a look at to what degree do they play with their pen. Okay, and what do we see? We have the control condition here is when the person on the video is not playing around with their pen. And then we see the mood does not have much effect here. But when the person on the video is pen playing, the subjects themselves are pen playing, but to a higher degree if they have been induced into a positive mood compared with if they have been induced into a negative mood. So again, positive mood increases likelihood of, in this case, imitation. Right. Similar result as in the other study. So then, of course, we ask ourselves, why? And it might be a part of it, the answer you gave, that if you're in a positive mood, you think well about other humans, you think they're behaving rationally. Well, maybe, I don't know. I don't think they're thinking so deeply when they play with their pen just to imitate another person's behavior. But one kind of theory, explanation that has been given to this is that your mood indicates what kind of situation you are in. That's one of the reasons we have moods. To indicate the nature of the situation I'm in. So information feedback. If I'm in a good mood, that indicates that the situation I'm in, everything is fine. No problem. Everything is fine. And if everything is fine, what do we want to do with our brain if everything is fine? Well, some results indicate that everything is fine. We don't want to use our brain. We want to put it in autopilot, in a rest state. We don't want to use it if it's not needed, right? That's what we all do in the weekend. We turn off our brains, watch stupid programs on the on the TV. Yes, I don't need to use my brain today. Bliss. And then the Monday comes. Oh no, I have to switch on my brain again. You need energy in order to use your brain to analyze the situation you're in. But if you're in a good mood, that indicates that everything is fine. You don't need to use your brain. Turn off the prefrontal cortex and go on autopilot. And if these theories about neurons and so on are correct, our automatic state is to imitate. That we have an automatic impulse to imitate. So if we turn off our prefrontal cortex, we are inclined to imitate behavior we observe. While if we're in a negative mood, that indicates everything is not fine. My mood indicates for me that there's something wrong with the situation I'm in. I need to use my brain in order to analyze what is wrong in the situation so I can do something about it. So I turn my brain on, I exert cognitive energy in order to find out what's wrong with the situation. And then, in those kind of situations, if I exert cognitive energy, I control my automatic impulses, and I'm not inclined to imitate to the same degree anymore. Something like that. To what mood have an effect on to what degree we exert cognitive energy, and that has an effect on to what degree we behave automatically, copying others' behavior. Okay, let's have a few brain scans here. So we have a brain area here called rostral cingulate zone. It's over there. In front of, posterior to the anterior cingulate cortex. So the most posterior part of anterior cingulate cortex. And studies have indicated that we have increased activity in the rostral cingulate zone if we behave in a way that we expect will lead to some kind of result, and it doesn't. So, for instance, we have learned that some kind of behavior leads to some kind of reward, and we perform the behavior, but suddenly we don't get the reward. Rostral cingulate zone, we have increased activity there. It indicates the goal was not achieved. Maybe I need to adjust my behavior. There's some kind of need for behavioral adjustment. So that's what increased activity in the rostral cingulate zone has been associated with. So let's have a look at this. So we have subjects. We put them in the fMRI. Okay. And while they're in this scan, look at slides. They look at female faces. And for every face, they're going to give an answer here. How attractive is this face? On a scale from 1 to 8. So they give their answer. In this example, they have a look at this face and they give the answer 6. After they have given their answer, they get to see what have others answered. And of course, this is not real, but it's fake. They're told that others have given either the same answer as you did or something else. And if I remember right, the subjects are told that the others here is a huge population of Europeans from many European countries. So this is, so to speak, the European average rating of this face. So in this example, let's say the subject answers 6, And then after that, they get to see that the European mean here, average is 8. So Europeans on average think that this face is more attractive than you do. So sometimes they get to see the others think that give a higher rating than you do, sometimes that the others give a lower rating than you do, and sometimes they get to see that the others give exactly the same rating as you do. And when they are given this information, we have a look at their brain activity. Okay. And then we go for the next picture. Half an hour later, we have taken the subjects out from the scan, and they get to rate the same faces again. And it's quite a lot of faces, so they probably can't exactly remember how they have rated this face half an hour earlier. But we know what they have rated. So they get to rate the same faces again. So what we have a look at is behavior modification. How they modify their behavior from the first to the second session. And if this is affected by a conflict with a group mean, and if it's associated with brain activity. Do you think it is? Yeah, because otherwise you would not present these results. So, if we have a look at the rating, modification of rating, we see that if the subjects get to see that the others have rated the face as more attractive than you have done, then they increase their rating from the first to the second session. If they get to see that the group mean is lower than your rating, then they lower their rating from the first to the second session. So they modify, on average, people modify their answers for it to be more in accordance with the group mean. Okay? So conformity, example of conformity. But of course we see that people don't conform every time. And some of them conform to a higher degree than others. So if you have a look at brain activity here, for instance, if they get to see that your answer deviates from the group mean, then we see increased activity in the rostral cingulate zone, which would indicate some kind of need for behavioral modification. And we also see decreased activity in the nucleus accumbens. And I don't know if you have heard so much about nucleus accumbens. You probably know more about this than I do. I never had that kind of cognitive course as you have just had. But the things I have learned is that activity in nucleus accumbens in striatum is usually associated with reinforcement. You get some kind of reward. You do something and you're rewarded for this. And we see increased activity in nucleus accumbens. So feelings of reward. So it feels less rewarding to see that your rating deviates from the group, compared with if you see that your rating is the same as the group's. So this indicates that it doesn't feel so nice to deviate from the group rating. People don't get happy about this. Yes, I think differently than others do. Yeah. No, it's rather, oh shit, others don't think like I do. Maybe I have to do something about it. That maybe I have to do something about it. That is the rostral cingulate zone activity. Okay. Sometimes people conform. They modify their rating so it will be more in accordance with the group rating. So, conflict followed by conformity. Compared with conflict, they see that their rating deviates from the group, but they don't modify their rating. Conflict not followed by conformity. So, if we look at brain activity in the first session, and how it's associated with this modification or no modification of behavior, we see that increased activity in rostral cingulate zone and decreased activity in nucleus accumbens is associated with conformity. Increased activity, rostral cingulate zone, decreased activity in nucleus accumbens is associated with a modification of rating, so it will be more in accordance with the group rating. Right? So, if I translate these to emotions, of course that might be problematic. But if I do, if it feels bad to see that my rating deviates from the group rating, then I change my rating. If it doesn't feel so bad, then the probability of change of modification of rating is less. And if we go a step further, some of these subjects conform more than others. Some are more conforming than others. What is the difference between conformist and non-conformist? What is the difference between sheep and kick-ass individualists here in the world? What is the difference between those? Well, it feels differently. So they make a median split here. Call some people conformist. They conform more than the others. And non-conformist. And what we see that non-conformists have, this is a decrease in nucleus accumbens activity. Non-conformists have a lesser degree of decrease in nucleus accumbens activity than conformists. So this indicates that for some people it feels worse to be shown that their behavior deviates from others. For others it doesn't feel so bad. And this is associated with their actual behavior modification. They didn't find here, I guess for some people it might even feel nice to see, yeah, I'm not like others, I rate differently. But generally it goes in the other direction. But more for some and less for others. So, brain activity is associated with feelings of brain activity that might be associated with feelings of reward is associated with behavior modification. Some last affecting factors here. Model factors. We seem to be conforming more with some models than with others. And for instance, similarity and status have been indicated as factors in this. Okay, this is, I don't know, I guess nobody else ever has taken up this study on a lecture, but I found it somewhere. So it's like Ash experiment. Similar setup. We have subjects, they look at lines in group and tell their answer. But in this setup, some of the real subjects, they're physically handicapped, so they sit in wheelchairs. And we don't just and some of the accomplices, likewise, are physically handicapped, and we put them in wheelchairs. It's not just people sitting in wheelchairs, they actually do that all the time. So some accomplices sit in wheelchairs, some don't, and some of the subjects similarly sit in wheelchairs and some don't. So we get 4 combinations here. Subject in wheelchair with accomplices who like themselves sit in wheelchairs, or with accomplices who don't sit in wheelchairs. Subjects who don't sit in wheelchairs with accomplices who don't sit in wheelchairs, or with accomplices who do sit in wheelchairs. So the real subject, again, I don't know where in the line they're put here, but sometimes the accomplices here tell the wrong answer, obviously wrong answer, and we have a look at how the subjects behave. Do they conform with the accomplices' wrong answer? And is it affected by similarity here when it comes to sitting in wheelchair or not? And the answer is yes. Subjects who don't sit in wheelchairs conform more with accomplices. That was not genitive, that was only plural. Accomplices who, like themselves, don't sit in wheelchairs than with accomplices who sit in wheelchairs. You see? And the complete opposite for those who sit in wheelchairs. So a subject who sits in wheelchair tells the same wrong answer as the accomplices do to a higher degree if those accomplices, like themselves, sit in wheelchair compared to if they don't. So, of course, we ask ourselves, why is that? Why? What kind of reasons could there be behind this result?
The other people are not in our in-group.
No? So,
We are not as likely to conform with people who are not in our in-group.
why not?
Because, I don't know, they're not, we don't feel the need to be liked by those people maybe.
Why not? Who is it more? Well, I think I would say the same thing. So, if somebody is not in my in-group, and I conform with this person, is that the rational strategy for me? Let's say there is no right or wrong answer here. Of course, if they go out from a building that is on fire, no, I shouldn't say that. But if they do that, of course, in that kind of situation. But if they have a T-shirt with a certain color and it doesn't affect my likelihood of survival, should I conform with somebody who is member of the out group? Is that a rational strategy? Good strategy? What is the risk with this strategy? To conform with the members of the out group. What's the risk with that? What will others in my in-group think about that? Oh, Kimmo conforms with out-group. Good for him. No, they will think, what the fuck? What a traitor. Kick him out. He's not member of our out-group anymore. Well, maybe that's not risky, because if my in-group kicks me out, I can easily merge into the formerly out-group, and they will say, oh, Kimmo, you're welcome in our group because you conform with our behavior. Will they say like that? No, probably not. So I get kicked out from my in-group, the out-group doesn't take me, and I stand there on my own and try to survive. So it's probably a safer behavior to conform with the in-group. I might stay as a member of the in-group. It might lead to some conflict with the out-group, but that conflict might be there anyway. So it's probably a more riskier strategy to conform with the out-group rather than the in-group. And of course, sometimes there might also be that's normative reasons for this result. Of course, sometimes it's not obvious in this case, but sometimes there might also be some informative reasons for this. Because different people different behavior might be the right thing for different people. Well, I observe my daughter. She takes on socks in the morning. It takes 2 hours for her to put on those damn socks, but eventually she puts on those socks. And they're usually pink, and they're size that big. So then I could think like, oh, my daughter is using socks that are in that way. Should I use them also? Is that the right behavior for me to put on similar socks? No, I might, okay, it's a silly example. I think, well, maybe that's the right thing for her to do. It's the right thing for her, but I shouldn't copy that behavior because it's probably not the right thing for me to do. If you see a chimpanzee walking around naked, you might not think, oh, that's the right thing to do, to walk around naked. Now you think, okay, it might be the right thing for chimpanzees, but not for me. While if you see humans walking around naked, well, maybe you start to think a second time. Something like that. Informative reasons why we might be more inclined to conform with the in-group rather than out-group. And Claude Charev and company here made a study about that also. So the same setup here, people look at pictures, photos, and give attractiveness rating. And then they get to see what others have rated, how others have rated. But sometimes they are told that this rating have been done by humans. And sometimes they are told that this rating have been done by computers. So we have computers with some kind of attractiveness rating software, and these computers with different software That's this thing they have come up with this rating. You follow? So the others here might be members of the human in-group or members of the computerized out-group. And again, we wait half an hour and they get to do the ratings again. And we have a look at their brain activity when they get to see the others rating. And what do we see? Well, if we have a look at conformity here, so we see here they increase their rating if they've seen that the others increase their rating, and they decrease their rating if they see that the others have a lower rating than themselves. So they conform. We have conformity here. But we see that the degree of conformity is bigger if the others are humans like themselves compared with if the others are computer software. So we conform more with humans than with computer software. Right? Does it feel rational? Imagine you're one of the subjects, you're laying there, and you give a rating. And then you see other persons have given a very different rating from yours. How does it feel? Well, it might make you wonder, well, maybe I have a wrong taste or something like that. You start to doubt about your own rating if you see that others rate very differently than you do. What do you think if you get to see that these computer software have conducted a very different rating from yours? Do you start to doubt your own rating? No, probably you think, what a shitty software, you think. Or something like that. I think it's quite interesting that people still change their rating in accordance with software. But not as much as in accordance with the others, if the others are humans. If we have a look at brain activity, we also see that people have a bigger increase in rostral cingulate zone activity if they get to see that their rating is in conflict with the others and the others are humans, compared with if the others are computers. And bigger decrease in nucleus accumbens activity if the others are humans. So it feels probably worse to see that your behavior is not in accordance with other humans compared with computer software. Status. Also. Of course, members, these overlap this phenomena. Probably members of the in-group, we perceive that they have a higher status than members of out-groups. I found this old study. So it's only female subjects. Female students, I guess. So they get to rate themselves. How independent are you? How aggressive are you? How much focused are you on appearance? How career-oriented are you? Sentimental and so on. So they make a self-evaluation here. Self-rating. Okay? After that, they get information about the man they're going to meet later on. So they're going to meet this man. And sometimes, and I didn't decide this, but sometimes the man is seen as attractive. It's a tall man, a bit older than themselves, Princeton senior, single, no girlfriend. He has a car. Okay, this is 75 in the States today. Oh, what a loser, we will think, but 75 in the States. Oh, he has a car. Important factor here. And he likes sports. Okay. My ex didn't like that I was watching football all the time, but I guess here it means something else, like sports. Okay. So they call this an attractive man. Sometimes the man is described as an attractive man. He's short, he's young, he's a freshman at the university. He already has a girlfriend, no car, and he doesn't like sports. He's a nerd. Okay. And then they also get the information that this man that they're going to meet either thinks that women should be traditional, stay at home, watch kids bake and so on. Yeah, something like that. That's at least what I associate with. Or this man, either attractive or non-attractive, think that women should not be traditional. They should, make a career and so on. So they get the information about this man that they are going to meet later on. Then after this information, they do the self-rating again. How independent, aggressive, and so on are you. And they're told that the man they're going to meet will see this information, how they rate themselves. Okay. So we'll have a look at how they change their self-presentation from the first session here to the second session. That's what we'll have a look at. At the second session here, they also make an intelligence test with anagrams. So we'll have a look at how the results on this intelligence test looks. So what do we think here? Do they change their self-presentation from the first to the second session here? Always? No? Don't they change their self-presentation? When they're going to meet the unattractive man. Exactly. So if they're going to meet the nerd, the short nerd, okay, they don't change their self-presentation. If they're going to meet this hunk, the attractive man who has a car, remember he has a car, okay, and they get the information that this person likes traditional women. So what do? Well, they change their self-rating in a more traditional feminine way. They rate themselves as less independent, more sentimental, less career-oriented, and so on. If they're going to meet a hunk who likes his women traditional. Okay. If they're going to meet this hunk and the hunk thinks that women should make a career and so on, what do? Well, they change their rating in the opposite direction. As less traditional feminine. They rate themselves as more independent, more career-oriented, less sentimental, and so on. So self-presentation here is affected by who you are going to meet and what that person likes or doesn't like. You conform with their expectations, at least if they're attractive. Okay, one interesting thing here also, we have a look at the anagram test, the intelligence test. Intelligence is such deep-rooted characteristic of humans, it should not be affected by this, right? Right? Wrong. These women get the best result on this intelligence test when they're going to meet an attractive man who doesn't like traditional women. If they're going to meet a hunk who thinks women should be traditional, they get the worst result on this intelligence test. If they're going to meet an attractive person, what the fuck, doesn't matter, same result. So what does this learn us? Well, it learns us obviously that women should not date attractive men with conservative views because that makes them stupid. Okay, that's the result. So what is the obvious next study? Same thing, but with men. So for that we had to wait 20 years. So this is the same. They're going to meet a woman. They self-presentation. They get the information about this woman. Does she like hunks, so on, or less masculine men? And they, if I remember right, the manipulation of degree of attractiveness here was through a photo. They get to see a photo, either a very attractive woman or a less attractive woman. And we see that if they're going to meet an attractive woman, they don't change their self-presentation. If they're going to meet an attractive woman who likes masculine men, they immediately become very masculine. If they're going to meet an attractive woman who doesn't like masculine men, they conform with that expectation. They suddenly become less masculine. So self-presentation. these subjects conform with the person's expectations they're going to meet. That affects their self-presentation. And I guess it's quite common that we do like this. For instance, if we're going to apply for some work, what kind of person would they like to have in this position at this work? And then we change our self-presentation. Oh, you like somebody who comes with own ideas. Well, I do that all the time. Or you like somebody who is part of the team. Oh, I never come with own ideas. I always play within the team, and so on. So that was the affecting factors. Now we're going to turn the ship around. I don't know if you said it. Because now I said that it's cool with conformity. We probably behave in a more rational way in many situations if we conform with others, imitate others, than if we try all the alternatives ourselves. But now we're going to have a question. Is it always a good strategy to conform? Now we have a look at the downside of conformity. Although it might be a good rule of thumb, if you don't know what to do, look what others are doing and copy their behavior. But it might not work so well in some kind of situations. I read this theoretical article, it's many years ago, but I think it made an impression on me. This Rogers, he writes something about like this. If we have two main strategies, either individual learning, you're trying to figure out how to behave in a certain situation. There are two main options. Either you try out the different alternatives yourself and pick out the best one. Individual learning, individual tryout. Or if there are others who are behaving in this area, you have a look at them and then you copy their behavior. Social learning. You have a look at how others are behaving. And how successful, how rational are these? How well functioning are these two main strategies? Well, according to Rogers, that depends on what strategy the others are following. Because the others might have come up to this conclusion, they made a choice based on individual learning. They tried the different alternatives and picked the best one. Or the others might also be following social learning. They do what they do because everybody else is doing that. And according to Rogers here, how successful, how well-functioning social learning is as a strategy, it's most successful when others are not using it. It's less successful if the others are using the social learning strategy. The individual learning strategy, to try the different alternatives yourself, it's not affected by what strategy the others are following. As an example, let's imagine you're going out to dinner and you have a few alternatives. Let's cook it down, as we say in Swedish, to two alternatives. Two restaurants. Restaurant A and restaurant B. And you're trying to make a choice. Which of these ones will I go to? Okay. And you know that a lot of people, restaurant A is very popular. A lot of people are going there. Restaurant B, nobody goes there. You make a phone call, ask, do you have any tables for night? And they ask you, how many do you want? So, restaurant A is very popular, restaurant B is not very popular. And now you're trying to make a decision. Which restaurant will you pick? Okay, you could follow two strategies here. You could try, let's say you're going for an important dinner in a few days' time, so you could go to both of these restaurants and have a look. Which one is the better? Which one has the better food? You're going to invite your boss for dinner in a few days, so you think this must be right. So you could follow one strategy. You go to both of the restaurants, and then you pick the one that is best. Individual learning. Or you could have a look at everybody else is going to restaurant A, nobody's going to B, and imitate them. Okay, I choose restaurant A. social learning. Of course, we might think the individual alternative is the best one. To try both restaurants and pick the best one. Is there any cost to this strategy compared with social learning?
More time.
It takes more time. Anything else? More money. It even costs more in monetary units here. What did you say more?
More resources.
More resources. It might even be risky. You know, why is everybody avoiding restaurant B? It might automatically give you food poisoning just to open the door. Okay, so you try the different alternatives, makes you sick, your boss gives you the foot, and there went that strategy. So individual learning, of course, is a more risky strategy. It takes more time, more resources, and so on, compared with social learning, to just imitate what everybody else is doing. And now the question is, if every one of those who goes to restaurant A and not to B have tried both and picked A, then it's probably a very safe strategy to just have a look at what they're doing and do the same. Because if we tried both restaurants, we would also come up with the conclusion that restaurant A is the best one. Because that's what everybody else has come up to. So if everybody else have used individual learning, then the best strategy for us is probably to just have a look at what they do and do the same. We will make the same choice as with individual learning without the cost of individual learning. Then we would be in this end. To imitate would be the better strategy. However, we might be in the other end. Everybody else might be going to restaurant A because everybody else is going to restaurant A. They're just imitating each other. Everybody thinks somebody knows that this is the better restaurant, but nobody actually knows because nobody has ever gone to restaurant B. And in that situation, we might do better if we tried both restaurants. Because then we might learn that, restaurant B is the better one. Everybody else is making a mistake. Everybody else is making a mistake because they're just copying each other. Nobody have actually ever tried both alternatives. Okay. So what might be usual, it might be more common that we're in this realm. At least somebody has tried the different alternatives. But it might be that sometimes we're in this end. Everybody we observe are just imitating each other, and in that case we might do better not to imitate them, but to actually try the different alternatives ourselves. And this brings us to a phenomena here called the bystander effect. As people observe a crisis, somebody is laying down on the pavement or something like that, so they observe this, but they don't do anything. They observe the crisis. They could have helped, but they don't. Bystander. They stand by. They don't help. And of course, in every textbook, I guess if I remember right, it's the same in your textbook. What is the classical example of this bystander effect? It's Quito Genovese in was it Brooklyn or Bronx in the 60s. She was attacked on the street during the night. She was many times by a man who attacked her, and she was screaming, and a lot of people heard this and had to look through the window, and they saw this attack going on, and they could have called the police, but nobody did. And afterwards, of course, the media was telling that, people are horrible. We humans, we really enjoy to think how horrible we are, or at least how horrible others are. I think we probably not usually including ourselves in when we say that people are horrible. Okay, so that sells a lot of copies of papers to if it says that read this and you will learn how horrible people are. But a couple of journalists, I think there were some researchers involved also, interviewed these people who had been in these apartments, who had seen the attack, and who had not called the police. Why did they not call the police? Was it because they were thinking, what the fuck, I don't care if she gets killed? Were they thinking like that? No, nobody seemed to be thinking like that. They were at least indicated that they were quite concerned about the attack. But they still didn't call the police. Why didn't they call the police? Because they could see other people in other windows. So they knew others are also seeing this. And if they saw that others are seeing this, what is the next thought? Somebody else will call, or somebody else probably already have called. So there's no need for me to call. So because there was many witnesses, nobody called, because they thought the other witnesses probably already had called the police. Maybe if they hadn't seen other people, other witnesses, they have realized that I'm the only one who sees this attack, then that might have increased the likelihood for them to call the police. Because then they would have felt a personal responsibility. Somebody has to call the police, and I'm the only witness, therefore I have to call the police. In the real situation, people were maybe thinking, somebody has to call the police, there are many witnesses, somebody have probably already called the police, so I don't have to. So you feel more personal responsibility when you're the sole witness of a crisis, compared with if there are many other witnesses. A couple of researchers, Latane and Orley, they have conducted many quite funny studies about this. Okay, so if we take this explanation, the popular explanation in the media was that people were not calling the police because they didn't. We are so unempathetic, we don't care about other humans. We see, oh, she's going to get killed, but what the fuck, I don't give a shit, so I don't call the police. That's the popular explanation. Even today you can see that also in Swedish newspapers, that if something like this happens, the media is out, oh, we're so horrible, we human beings. We're so egoistic. Latany and Dorley, they thought they controlled for this egoistic explanation, a possibility for that, by putting people themselves in a potentially dangerous situation. And even if you're an egoistic monster, at least you should care about yourself, right? if you're not a suicidal egoistic monster. So if you should care about your own self-being. But what happens? Could this bystander effect show itself even if people's own situation might be dangerous? Well, let's have a look. So in this classical experiment, they had subjects, and they put the subjects in one of three conditions. In one condition, the subject is sitting in a room filling out the questionnaire. So they're sitting there on their own filling out the questionnaire. In the second condition, they put in three subjects. So three naive subjects are sitting in the room filling out the questionnaire. In a third condition, we have one real subject together with two fake subjects, two accomplices. They sit there. And the accomplices here, they're told, whatever happens, just continue filling out the questionnaire. Don't do anything else. And what happens in all three conditions? What happens here?
They're still sitting there writing the formula.
Yeah, well, what happens in this? Well, after a while, there starts coming smoke into the room through a vent in the wall. So, look here. This is what happens. Comes smoke into the room. So the room where they're sitting with their questionnaire is filling up with smoke. And it's the same in all three conditions. Now you see it's a lot of smoke there. And the question is, what do these egoistic human monsters do when they're sitting in a room that's filling up with smoke? Do you have any kind of general recommendation? What should people do if they're sitting in a room that's filling up with smoke? They should do something about it. Why? Because it might be dangerous. Why? Because smoke might indicate fire, and our human body don't go well with fire, so you should do something about it. You should not sit there. But what do these subjects do? Well, it is different in different conditions here. So there we have cumulative percentage of subjects who does something about this. Leave the questionnaire, open the door, Yell out, something is wrong. They do something about the situation. And here we have time. After 6 minutes with smoke, the experiment is discontinued. I looked that word up yesterday. I'm glad I can't forget. It's discontinued. And if I remember right from the paper, it says that after 6 minutes, the room is so full with smoke that it's very difficult to see the questionnaire in front of you. So it's not any subtle amount of smoke. It's a lot of smoke in there. So here we see it. This line is for the condition with single subjects. They're sitting there alone. After about 2 minutes with smoke, about half of them have done something about the situation, and it all goes up to 75%. So it's still 25% sitting there coughing and trying to fill out the damn questionnaire, but most of them do something about the situation. And this could be compared with this line, the dotted line here. This is amount of persons who does something about the situation when they're sitting in the room with two others. And it's not amount of persons actually, it's amount of groups where at least one of them does something about the situation. So it's enough for one of the three to do something for it to count here. And we see, how do they react? How do they react? Well, they react hardly anything, very slowly. Nothing happens. They sit there, and it goes up a little bit in the end here, but still, much less persons doing something about the situation if they're sitting there with two others. And even more extreme if the person is sitting with two accomplices who refuses to do anything else but to stare at their questionnaires. How do we explain this? A student I had, he gave the possible explanation that if you're in the room with two others, you might be thinking that, well, at least I don't die alone. Here I will die, but I won't die alone, so no need to worry. No, I don't think so. I don't think people are thinking like that. Why are people less inclined to react when they're sitting in the room together with two others?
They might be self-conscious that maybe the smoke isn't dangerous at all, and they are afraid to...
Why would they draw the conclusion that the smoke isn't dangerous? It's the same smoke.
Well, the possibility of humiliation, if the smoke wasn't real, then they worried for nothing, and they worried about what the other subjects will think.
Yeah, and that is not a risk if you're in the room on your own. So there's no need to hold back an impulse to do something. That's probably one of the reasons here. Also, these subjects were questioned interviewed afterwards. And when these person were asked about, why didn't you do, did you see the smoke? Yeah, of course, there was so much of it. Why didn't you do anything? Well, it wasn't anything dangerous, they thought. So they draw the conclusion that the smoke wasn't anything dangerous if they were in the room with two others. Compared with if they were there alone, they thought mainly that, well, something could be wrong. Why do they draw the conclusion the smoke isn't dangerous if they're in the room with two others? Yeah, the others too are not reacting to the smoke, which indicates it's not dangerous. Why aren't the other two intelligence persons reacting to the smoke?
Because you aren't.
Because you aren't. And why aren't you reacting to the smoke? Because they aren't. Imagine yourself, you're sitting there writing in the questionnaire, the room starts to fill up with smoke. You might think, that's not good, I think. What do you do in that situation? When you think something might be wrong, what do you do? Look at the others. And what do they do? Nothing. Why? Because they think they function just as we do. They try to have a look, how are the two others reacting? So 3 people are sitting there trying to have a sneak look at how are the two others reacting, and because they are occupied with this, nobody does anything. And because nobody does anything, everybody draws the conclusion It's not dangerous. If it would have been dangerous, of course those two intelligent persons would have done something about it. And all three think similarly, nobody does anything. So the others' inactivity indicates to us that nothing is dangerous. And we fail to realize that our own inactivity is an example for them that nothing is dangerous. There is a thought, it's called pluralistic ignorance. The thought that because nobody is doing anything, there is no need to do anything. And when everybody thinks like that, nobody does anything. There are also, if I remember right, they've done versions of this study. Sometimes they put people so they sit opposite to each other on two sides of a table. And sometimes they sit back to back. What do we see? Does that have any effect? Yes, it has. If they sit facing each other, they are more inclined to do something about the situation. Because then you might have a look, how are the two others reacting, and then you see in this other's face, oh God, he's horrified. Do you also think, yeah, should we? Yeah, let's do something. While if you sit back to back, it's very difficult to see how he is reacting, so what the fuck, I don't do anything. So you sit there both with horrid faces, but you don't see each other's horrid faces, so you don't do anything. It's too much of a risk to actually tap him or her on the shoulder and ask, how are you feeling? Are you all so nervous about this, Mark? No, we don't do that. So the bystander effect. So this indicates that inactivity in crisis situation might at least partly be due to the presence of other witnesses. We take their inactivity as an example that nothing is really dangerous. While if we are in a situation ourselves, we are more affected by the situation itself. We might analyze information in a more objective way. Another phenomena that also been partly explained with similar way as this bystander effect is something called groupthink. And this is groupthink is decision making in group gone wrong. What do you think? It's usually bad or good to make decisions in a group rather than individually? Good. Why? You can get different opinions. In a group, of course, people together, they have more information, more knowledge, more experience than every member of the group individually. And, of course, information, experience, and so on tends to lead to better decisions. So groups probably tend to make better decisions than individuals. But sometimes the group members' experience information doesn't have any effect on the group decision. Why? Well, it's because it might be in some groups risky to present the information you're sitting on. It might be risky for you to have a differing opinion. Of course, it's good with differing opinions, but it's risky to present a differing opinion. And of course, most of the studies, examples, I didn't find any good actual experiment about this, but it's have been written that this might have been working, the groupthink phenomena in different cases. Of course, mainly American, because that's where psychological research is conducted to 90% or something like that. So Pearl Harbor, the Japanese attack on Pearl Harbor, the American military, they had information about Japanese planning an attack somewhere in the Pacific. That information was ignored. Everything is fine. Oh shit, everything wasn't fine. Okay. Bay of Pigs. Kennedy and his advisors decided to invade Cuba using 1,000 ex-Cubans. So they send them ill-equipped, ill-trained to something called the Bay of Pigs in Cuba. And I don't know, but many of those 1,000 were killed by Cuban military immediately. The rest were taken prisoners. And this was a horrible, drawback for Kennedy. And Castro could use this as, oh, look, those horrible Americans, they are actually trying to invade us. So it was a kind of PR victory for Castro and disaster for Kennedy and his administration. Nixon gave a go-ahead for his accomplices to make burglary in Watergate, in the Democratic headquarters, and they were caught, and Nixon had to resign from office. Horrible decision. Made in a group. Challenger space shuttle exploded shortly after takeoff. It was shown afterwards, there was information indicating that there was some technical flaws with this shuttle. But they went ahead with the launch, and it exploded. And people killed. A lot of money lost. And everything. Really bad decision. So why have they made these bad decisions? Of course, we can't know all the factors. But let's take this Bay of Pigs as an example. Imagine you're one of Kennedy's advisors here. That's one of the possible works you get by studying at psychology program at Karolinska. Many of you will come advisors for American presidents and so on. So imagine you're one of Kennedy's advisors. And you're all sitting in the Oval Room, hanging there. And the president comes into the room and he says, "What do you say, fellows? Shouldn't we invade Cuba?" And you have a lot of knowledge, information, and you think, what a stupid idea, you think. For some reason, in an English accent, you think like that. What a stupid idea. That's the worst thing I ever heard. Will you say that? Mr. President, what a stupid idea. Would you say that? No, why not?
We might lose our job.
You might lose your job. There's a lot of normative reasons for you to not present your opinion that it's a stupid idea. So what do? You stay quiet. What do you wait for? What are you waiting for?
For somebody else.
For somebody else. Of course, my intelligent colleagues here, somebody will tell the stupid president that this is a stupid idea. Do they? No, why not? They're waiting for somebody else to react. So we have, let's say, how many advisors do we have? So let's say we have 10 advisors. All of them think this is a stupid idea, but nobody says anything. No, let's say we have 9 advisors who think it's a stupid idea. They don't say anything. One advisor, God knows how he got his work, but he thinks it's a good idea. What does he do? He tells the president, "What a good idea, President." So if you think it's a good idea, you feel free to say so. If you think it's a bad idea, you keep quiet. And because you keep quiet, and you notice the others are keeping quiet, what do you start to think?
That they think it's a good idea.
Oh, I thought they would think it's a stupid idea, but they don't say anything. Conclusion, they think it's a good idea. Maybe it's only me. Maybe I don't have all the information here. Maybe it's only me who think it's a stupid idea. Maybe it is actually a good idea. So you might have a more positive look at this. So 9 advisors think it's a stupid idea. One thinks it's a good idea. Everybody keeps quiet except the 10th advisor. And after a while, people start to think, maybe it is a good idea. And the funny thing here is, it's not sure Kennedy thinks it's a good idea. Somebody maybe told him, "Oh, we should invade Cuba." And he thinks, "Oh, what a stupid idea. Let's try this on my smart advisors." And he goes into the Oval Room and he says, "Fellows, should we invade Cuba?" but he doesn't say because he's a president. He's wearing a tie. He can't say "What do you say, fellows? Should we invade Cuba?" What the shit? Nobody is saying anything. Only this stupid guy saying it's a good idea. But all the intelligent advisors, none of them is telling me it's a stupid idea. Maybe it is a good idea. And then we drive this through. It might be possible that everybody thinks it's a stupid idea, but we still do it. Because everybody thinks that everybody else thinks it's a good idea. I don't know if you believe this. Should I take this? I have a personal experience of it. At least once. My then girlfriend, we lived together, so we said like this on a Friday morning, maybe we should go to the movies tonight. Okay? So nothing decided, but maybe we should go to the movies. During the day, a friend of me calls me and says, hey, Kimmo, should we go out and drink beer and play pools? So I have two options here. Go and drink beer and play pools with my friend, or go to a really shitty, probably, she being having her taste, movie, okay? And I think, much rather this other alternative. Okay. During the day, I was told afterwards, my girlfriend had a chat with some of her friends, and they said, oh, we should go to this nice new restaurant tonight. And she was thinking, going to movies with a muppy Kimmo, who's always in a bad mood for some reason when we go to there, or go to this restaurant with my nice friends. She would like to go to the restaurant with her friends rather than going to the movies with me. And I would rather go to play pools with my friend than go to movies with my girlfriend. What did we do that evening? We went to the movies. We both went for the worst alternative. Why? I blame it on her, of course. If I remember this right, hindsight bias, it's called. She called me during the day and asked like this, did you want to go to the movies? And it was a question. Did I interpret it as a question? No, I interpreted it as that she wanted to go to the movies. Oh shit, she really wants to go to the movies. So now my option is saying, no, I don't want to go to the movies with you, with some consequences, of course. So I said, yeah, that would be nice. And she in the other end of the phone line was thinking, oh no, he really wants to go to the movies. Shit. Okay, let's do that. And off we went to the movies. When we both could have went for another alternative that both of us liked more. But that's how groupthink works. In some situation, you make a decision. You go for an alternative, not because you think it's the best alternative, but because you think others think it's the best alternative. And you don't, for some reason, want to hurt their feelings or something like that. So Bay of Pigs and going to the movies. Same phenomena. Some affecting factors. There's a book written by Janice who takes up this. As I said, I found a few experiments there, but they were not very convincing. We tried to show this in an experimental session. But it's more like these anecdotes and histories that they think that might be related to these groupthink phenomena. And a few affecting factors, for instance, if it's a very coherent group, the risk for groupthink increases. And isolation also increases likelihood for groupthink. Why? Why would that increase the likelihood? Why would isolation, for instance, increase the likelihood for groupthink? Well, then you don't get differing opinions from the outside. You don't get outside input from the outside, which would make you think twice. So if the only opinions you get, if the only information you get is from the others from the group, the risk for groupthink increases. So what we see, for instance, different sects, what do they do? If you want to start a sect, what do? You take the sect members, what do?
Take them to the middle of nowhere.
You take them into the middle of nowhere, you take the phones away and so on. They can't be in contact with the outside world. Because if they're in the contact of this outside world, the likelihood increases that they will think that your ideas are wrong. So if you're going to start a sect, isolate it from the outside world. Actually, that's okay. I'm soon finished. A thought I had. I was standing in a queue to buy milk, at least as I remember, in the supermarket. And in front of me, maybe there was someone in between, there was a skinhead. And he was also buying milk. And I thought, oh, skinheads also buy milk. Okay. Oh no. That's almost human. They're buying milk. And I don't know if I interpreted the situation, of course, some kind of hindsight bias, but I thought he felt very awkward in the situation because everybody was looking. Oh no, look, one of those horrible monsters. And he was standing there with his milk. He was isolated. Nobody told him anything. Not that we Swedes never talk in public anyway, but maybe even less with skinheads. Don't go out in public to talk with skinheads. He was isolated from others. People avoided him. Why? Why did people avoid him? Well, because it was obvious that he was a skinhead. From his appearance. He had no hair. Okay, and so on. So, if you're going to start a sect, and you don't have the possibility to move them out to the middle of nowhere, you can make them to be in the middle of nowhere, even in a crowded area. By making them show their group membership to the outside world, through clothes and so on. Because then they will always be treated as a member of your sect. And they will probably receive less input from the outside world than the others otherwise would. So, if you're going to start a sect, the members of it should dress in a very specific way and so on. So it's obvious for everybody that they're members of this sect. Authoritative leaders, of course, also increases the likelihood of groupthink. People, well, I'm not sure of this, but it said that the advisors were pretty afraid of Kennedy. He was quite authoritative figure. And his brother were also kicking ass if somebody went against the president. He was the president's pit bull, so to speak. So in a situation like that, of course you're more afraid about your position, and you make a harder effort to pick up signals from the leader and try to comply with them. So if we try to avoid groupthink, what should we do? If the president would have liked to avoid risk of groupthink when he goes to the Oval Room and gives a proposition, what should he do?
Tell them that he's not sure if it's a
Yeah.
good idea.
Because if he must make sure that they don't think that he thinks it's a good idea. Because if the advisor thinks that this is what president wants, then there is less probability that they will express differing opinions. So he should make sure that he's not sure himself. I don't know if we should do this or if we shouldn't. I want to hear your opinions. And it might be a good idea to state that I want to hear differing opinions. So Bob, or whoever, what is the downside of this idea? I'm telling you to say what's bad with the idea. I'm telling somebody else to come up with positive things about the idea. Because if you're giving orders to tell something bad about the idea, then it's free for you to say what's bad about the idea. You're not putting your own neck on the stake there. Because it's your job. You're told to come with differing opinions. And he also, the story here, I don't know how much of it's true, but it said that after this disaster with Bay of Pigs, his brother, Robert Kennedy, was, instead of giving the role of President's pit bull, he was given the role of devil's advocate. So every idea that was put forth to the administration, to the advisors, his job was to see bad sides of this idea and tell them. The risky things with that idea is this and that and that. Because if it's your job, again, then you're not putting your neck on the stake. It's your job to say bad things about ideas that's put forth. It's called devil's advocate. Just a couple of slides with obedience. We do as we're told. Somebody tells us to do something and we do it. That's obedience. Why do we engage in obedience? Why do we sometimes... I stopped with this a few years ago. A few years ago when I talked about obedience, just before this slide, I usually ask students to put their hand on the head like this. No, don't do it. Don't do it. And usually somebody was, oh no, I know what you're after, but maybe, I don't know. A big majority did as they told. And I said, well, now we'll talk about reasons for obedience. What kind of reasons are there for obedience? It could see, as I said before, as pretty similar to conformity. So we could think about informative and normative reasons. Informative reasons, we do as we're told because we think it's the rational way to act. We might draw the conclusion, this person knows more about this kind of situation than I do, so I should do as he or she tells me. For instance, if you have some kind of, strange headache, and you go to a doctor, and the doctor tells you, take 2 of these pills 3 times every day for 2 weeks. What do? You take the pills. Imagine you don't have any idea of what you're putting into your system, but still you do it. I do it because I trust this doctor knows more about this than I do. It's better for me to follow his instructions than to not do it. It's in my own interest. So informative reasons. Normative reasons. We do as we're told in order to avoid punishments and to receive rewards. If Jenny comes in running, she does this every now and then. She gets some kind of idea. Jenny Wikström, I'm talking about. She gets some kind of idea. She comes running into my room and says, Kimmo, we should do this and this and this. What do I say? Yeah, Jenny, we should. I never say, no, that's a bad idea. I say, yeah, Jenny, we should. Then I never do it anyway because I know she will forget that she told that. But I never go confront her. No, we shouldn't because she's my boss. So, so you nod your head and then you still can do whatever you want. That's a successful strategy here in life. So normative reasons. You do as you're told to get rewards and avoid punishments. Let's have a classical example. And this is, okay, and now I'm doing the same mistake. This is very famous. It's mentioned in many places, and it's really lousy study. There's no control group or anything. But I guess we still react on the results here. I don't remember if it's mentioned in your textbook. Yes. Okay. So we make a phone call to nurses on different wards in different hospitals. So we know they're working there, and we know that they're at work. So we call the wards and we say, I want to speak with nurse that and that. And then when the nurse comes to the phone, we tell them, this is Dr. So-and-so. Give patient so-and-so 20 milligram of astroturf. And then we hang up. Okay, is there anything fishy about this? Well, the nurse have no idea of who you are. You're a complete stranger for them. You tell the nurses that you're a doctor, but you say, this is doctor that and that, and you use a name that is not the doctor at the hospital. So it's not a doctor they have heard of. It's just a doctor with a name. Could be any doctor. Could be anyone. Okay? And we tell them to give a patient at the ward, so we know what patients they are, 20 milligram of astroten. And the thing is, there is no medication called astroten. And nurses, they have a list what medication they can give out. Not every nurse can give out any medication. There are rules about this. And because astroten doesn't exist, of course it's not on their list. They can't give out astroten. 20 milligrams. What happens? What happens? Of course, everybody, all of these nurses tells, go to hell and hang up. Right? Right? No. Nobody does as they're told. Or, we call 22 nurses. Does any one of these 22 do as they're told? No?
Probably some.
Some, how many?
But if the medication doesn't exist, how do they do it?
No, they do like this. That's why they do like this. Of these 22, 21 go to the room with the medication, and we have put there boxes that it says astroten on. They have no idea what this is. Oh, it's astroten. I never heard of it because it doesn't exist. We just made it up. But there are boxes with labels astroten. And on the boxes, it says very largely, OBS, maximum 10 milligrams a day. Never, 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 never more than 10 milligrams a day. What do these nurses do? They take 20 milligrams of astroten and they're on the way to give this to the patient when they're stopped. Okay, I guess it was only sugar pills in those anyway, but they stopped them anyway. So of 22 nurses, 21 does exactly as they're told. They break every regulation in the book in order to fulfill the order they are given. If I remember right, this one nurse who doesn't do as she's told. Any guesses about her? Long in the work, been a nurse for a long time, or new? She was completely new at work. And of course, through their education, all nurses are told, I don't know how it was in the 60s, though, but today they're all the time told, you have to make your own decisions. You have to make your own medical decisions and not only do what you're told. That's at least what they're told today. Isn't that funny? They're ordered to not take orders. So why do these nurses act as they do? Why? It's a selective group of especially stupid individuals that become nurses and therefore... Doctors say, what do nurses do at work all day long? Follow the orders. Maybe, let's say you're new at work, you're a new nurse. Doctors tells you what to do. And you've been told during your education, you have to make your own decisions. So doctor tells you what to do and you start to think, is that the medically correct way to do? No. What do you come up to usually? Yes, it is. Doctor tells you what to do, you make a decision, you come, that's probably the right thing to do, and you do it. And if this happens all days for a while, what will happen eventually? You will skip that middle part. Because it takes time. You can't make this evaluation every time. Eventually you will learn, doctor tells me I do, doctor tells me I do. You skip the middle part. And eventually doctor tells I do. Is there any good thing about this? That nurses obey automatically? Is it only bad? Or is it anything good with this? Is it anything good about automatic behavior? It's effective. I guess if you skip that middle part, it works faster. You can do many things at the same time. If you every time are going to make your own medical evaluation, it takes more time. And probably you get reinforced to act quickly. So you learn it. People like that I act quickly and so on. So you skip the middle part in order to act quickly and everybody is happy. And if you sometimes make the differing medical evaluation compared with the doctor and you tell them, no doctor, you're wrong. That's all positive, right? Oh, good. You're a good nurse. I like you. I tell you to do something and you don't do that. Yeah, I like those kind of nurses. Very good. By the way, you can you can go and get your stuff and go away from here. It's a risky thing to come with a differing opinion. Probably they learned this and they act automatically. Of course, we would like have some kind of control group or something like that. Some kind of correlation. How long time you've been in the profession and so on. If it correlates with the probability of obedience and so on. Okay. So, any questions? So, let's have lunch then.